So, welcome again into the stream of Dhamma. Hopefully you haven't missed it too much. It's always around, but it's good to spend some time recollecting, rehearsing, reflecting, considering, and sharing. So today will be a questions and answers or questions and responses session. And I've got a few questions here, and maybe there's a chance also for other questions to arise during our hour together. So we'll see how the occasion unfolds. So we begin with the salutation to the Triple Gem. Yoso bhagavaṁ araham samma sambuddho swakando yena bhagavana dhammo supatipanno yassa bhagavato savaka sangho Dhammam bhagavandam sadhammam sasangham Imehi sangare yanarahang arobinehi abhiputeyama Sadhu no bande bhagava sujira barini bhutopi Vajimajanananam manasam Ime sangaredo katavanang arabunde patiganatu Amhangam viharanam hidaya sukhaya Araham Dhamma sambuddho bhagava Buddham bhagavandam abhivati Swagado bhagavandam dhammo dhammam namasami Supatipanno bhagavando savaka sangho Sangham namam Andamayam Buddha Sabhakavando Abhupavanamakaram Ramasi Namo Andasam Bhagavando Arahando Samma Sambuddhasa Namo Andasa Bhagavando Arahando Samma Sambuddhasa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So let's spend some time sitting in meditation. And during these few minutes, we don't necessarily have the occasion to go very deeply and thoroughly into particular features of what may be arising for you, but always really useful, even 10 minutes or so, just to go back to the ground, the basis. And this is about recollection, just remembering where you are, like where your heart is, what you're in, how you're feeling. And along with that, recognizing the possibilities of the awakening. This begins really with a recollection, gratitude on one's received, and recollecting your own skillful deeds, or things you haven't done, the bad things you haven't done, and realizing why you didn't do them, and why you did the good things. There's a certain nobility of presence that we often don't really notice, because in some ways it's so obvious. The good that one does just because, and the things you don't do because, just recognizing that citta has got its own basic sanity and clarity, and one doesn't want to keep emphasizing that there's all these things wrong with you need to keep fixing. I mean, yeah, sure, there are storms and blemishes, but just to go back to the basic health, basic sanity and fundamental strength that we have. We're resilient. We bear with loss and pain and, enmity of others and frustration. And we do rise up to what's beautiful. And recollecting that, you need to really always establish your citta on its own proper ground. Don't establish your citta on its weak places. Like you're coming in with all kinds of problems you've got to solve. Come establish yourself on where you're not stressed and suffering, where there is a good foundation. And often when you look from there, you think, oh yeah, but that doesn't really matter. So what, because you found a firm ground to be on. The health of the citta, and see if you can bring that into your embodied state. I bring these two together frequently because the body acts as a resonator, so it amplifies the effect. It's not just a psychological thing. You start to feel yourself a little bit more firm and upright, and I'm okay, yeah. And the bodily resonance gives an added dimension and emphasis to that bright, proper tonality, the upright mind. Ujjucitto, ujjucitta, straight, upright mind, which is the foundation for all virtues that lead to awakening. Ujjucitta. Dignified. And just really establishing that, and let your bodily sense feel that till you feel your shoulders relax, your chest amplifies. Maybe just keep remembering for meditation, you often have to frequently relax around your eyes, your forehead, and your temples, because these areas get extremely activated. You're relaxing around there, your thought processes will quieten down just by that simple, without dealing with the topics, just the energy, instead of going to this compacted state in your head, begins to rest, and your thought processes quieten down considerably. But it's so unnoticed that within a snap of within a blink of an eye, you can the whole face can just go into that tight state again. So relaxing around the eyes, the forehead, the temples, open the throat all the time in the world to allow an out breath to roll out. All the time in the world to just wait until an in-breath wants to happen. And taste it as it's coming in. So you're savouring the flavour. And release it where it needs to be released. With it, you keep refreshing your system. Just this act alone, breathing, will refresh you if you bear it in mind and really feel it in your body. It will refresh you. This has to be to find that foundation where we are both feet on the ground, upright, open, straight, clean. If you do nothing more than that 3 times a day, that's already, a huge amount of benefit you've done for yourself. Okay, as it's very nice just to sit and meditate, isn't it? I mean, it's just remembering there's this basic sanity, clarity, freshness that you can return to, and you don't have to go anywhere for it. It's such a gift to ourselves if we only knew it, and if we could share that gift, if we could just listen to each other with that same, don't carry old impressions, don't carry expectations, don't carry demands, don't carry, just every time you just start fresh, breathe somebody in and breathe them out. And let yourself be breathed in and out. As in your uprightness, training oneself. Anyway, let's. We had a questions and answers session today, so I'll try to get these things up. And topics, few general topics. Start someone having how to manage inconvenient feelings of attraction towards somebody. Having a crush on someone I shouldn't be crushing on. Well, just who should you be crushing on? Indeed. Some perhaps linked to that, we have questions on reacting impulsively towards sexual desire and hatred. Not quite sure exactly what that means, whether reacting in accordance with them, that is, you're acting upon them, you find yourself plummeting or getting moved by sexual desire or aversion, or whether you're reacting to them. But we'll try to cover these topics, two topics, of course they're very linked. Desire and aversion. Sexual desire, very primary feature in nature, in human beings. So just remembering that this involuntary response that arises, kind of heating, only a heating up and a pulling of the citta, heats the body up. There's a pulling into the object of desire, with the fundamental assumption that once one unites with the object desire, then there'll be a gratification, a release, something beautiful occur. And maybe. But probably not for very long if it does occur. So you don't know that, but that's the expectation, or the fundamental, or the trigger sets up that particular paradigm. But it's only a trigger, remember. It's not really the person. So you just start to see, well, what is it that is attractive? Shape, probably it's just a mixture of bodily shape, what it suggests, strength or beauty or comfort, or these signs. And those are signs in your own citta. It's projecting out. Basically, human bodies, like you've seen one, more or less. Well, you've seen two, you've certainly seen them all. One male, one female. That's the basic design model. And, that's what it is. It's kind of, I don't want to be completely negative, but it's bony and lumpy and skin and flesh, and what can you get out of it, really? But on a kind of very bodily level, there's a kind of a heating up that occurs at the point of meeting and joining. Everything's aroused, and in that arousal, the mind is overwhelmed. So we just need to go, well, actually, what are you looking for? What is it looking for? Now, it's not easy to be rational with sexual desire because it generally poo-poos rationality, just like a bullet just rushes through. So you pull it back, say, let's see, what are you looking for and where do you see it? And you realize actually what your citta is angling on is really an amalgam of certain suggestions. Comfort, power, strength, excitement, feeling warmed, and maybe it's psychological, feeling appreciated, feeling loved, being cuddled, you know, that sense of intimacy and the relaxation and the happiness that can come from that. But it doesn't mean this person is going to provide it. You know, that's what's on the label, but it's not necessarily what's in the can. And even if it was in the can, then how long does it last? And then you've got to do it again. And eventually it kind of wears out and you've got to find someone else or something else to get it going on. So it's a very unsatisfying experience. And yet it also becomes addictive because you get hooked on that like a drug, get hooked on that flush and that rush. And you want some more, and then you come down, you want another one. So like anything else, these addictions, you've got to be a bit firm and hold back on it. And why? Why bother? You know, is it so bad? No, it's not so bad. It can be very bad, of course, because you get jealousy, you get adultery, you get cheating, you get abuse, you get all kinds of nasty stuff goes along with that. Frustration. She's not what I really wanted. He doesn't do it for me anymore. All this kind of stuff goes on. It's constant, you know, columns in newspapers dealing with people's sexual problems. So it's by no means a faultless joyride. But you know, well, maybe this one would. So just start to reflect. Well, what does that do to your mind? You know, what do your citta feel like in that state? Generally, hungry, heated, wanting, pushing towards. You look at that. Do you want to be with that? Is that comfortable? It's generally uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable with a sense I will be made comfortable by the other thing. So we're taking a state of discomfort, the tension and the hunger of the citta, and imagining that comfort will arise. Actually, if you act upon that, you're basically firming up the basis for discomfort. If you act upon the place, if you're feeling that sense of inadequacy and discomfort and craving, and you act upon that, well, doesn't that mean that you've in some ways empowered that sense? You've validated it. You said, yes, I will act upon you. Is that right? You know, if you follow the signal, you've in some way validated that signal as being worth following. Therefore, your citta will go through it again and again. And you keep returning to that state. So it really is putting yourself into bondage. So what's the other person? What do you become? What are you looking for? How does it affect you? And these qualities go very deep because they really are around pleasure, pain. They're around the sense of isolation and feeling warm and mutual with each other, which is agreeable. We like that. Isolation, we feel lonely, alone, cold, fed up. You know, have to do it all myself. These are very powerful experiences for people. You know, it can be very depressing, life on your own. And of course, the other this is that push, that pull towards the pleasant, agreeable, shared, where I no longer kind of on my own, left myself. Yeah. But you are, in some respect. Because as soon as the person leaves, then you haven't actually resolved the problem, you've mollified it. You've tranquilized it. You haven't actually resolved the problem. Problem of sense of separation, lack of comfort. Hatred, in some ways similar. What is it that we dislike? Do you dislike the person? No, I just dislike the way he talks. Okay. Do you dislike everything he says? No, I just like this particular way he has of always interrupting. So you just get down to particular, it's not a person, it's particular behaviors that jar, okay, against my sense. Is it possible that everybody in the world is going to fit into my sense? And what happens to me when I experience hatred? What does my chitta feel like? Sour, bitter, sharp, spiky, fighting. Am I going to let other people do that to me? I'm going to let other people's behavior, which may not be agreeable, which may be actually improper. That's bad enough. But to get your own mind soured up by it, let's make it twice as bad. It's like the Buddha said, if robbers get you to tie you down and saw your legs off with a saw, if you feel hatred towards them, you haven't really been following the instructions. Sounds a bit tough, but it's a metaphor. This is bad enough, getting your legs sawed off. That's bad enough. But it's even worse to have that happening and have your mind all on fire with hatred and aversion. So could we let it go? And both these signs, the unpleasant and the pleasant, wish to merge with the unpleasant, wish to push away, to merge with the pleasant and to push away the unpleasant, are the boundaries of the chitta. I want to include that within, I want to keep that out. There's a boundary there. Now, when we cultivate things like Brahma-vihara, you widen the boundary. So I want you inside my boundary. I want you as mine. I don't want you on my planet, right? Get out of my life, don't ever exist again. My boundary. That's something can be done to that boundary. It could be, because when the sense of owning is relinquished, there's just the boundary of awareness. This is the unpleasant, this is the pleasant, this is the fascinating, this is the repulsive. When there's no clinging to the center, to being the owner of these impressions, to being the one who is impinged upon, then these phenomena can pass through. The chitta is no longer activated by it. It doesn't take birth in them. It doesn't get fascinated by them. It doesn't establish a ground upon them. They don't arise. Or they arise less often. That's the big picture. That's the big process that we're creeping along in, probably as best we can, over years. Yeah. But that is the possibility. The only way, actually, that we can ever find a sense of satisfaction. So this is Brahma-vihara. And it's also a beautiful thing to do to your own body, because if you sit in the quality of loving kindness and you just feel there's an energy to it, which is very bright and open. You can't be contracted and depressed. You can't be, give him a little bit of metta, give her some metta. And, well, I suppose he could have some compassion. Yeah, maybe a little bit more, but not too much, you know. It doesn't deserve it. You just, and the body opens up, and that's so extremely refreshing and enjoyable, which is what we're here for. We're here to have a good time. This is the best way to do it. Now, most of us, you know, as we're working towards these things, general antidotes are to keep the sense of devotion, which keeps the heart open. Brahmavihara keeps the heart bright towards it, Brahmavihara towards yourself, towards a snail, towards people you like, towards people you can just about tolerate. You just keep pushing it, pushing those boundaries until it becomes very firm, until you can actually dwell in the sign itself, in the mood itself, becomes like a territory that you can dwell in. It's called a vihara because it is. It can be a place you dwell in and feel good with. And you keep building those up. And this tends to remove the hunger or the sourness or the edginess, which acts as the basis for sexual desire and ill will. Yeah. So, okay, you know, we talked for how long? 10 minutes on that. Yeah, practice with it for 10 years or 20. Yeah, these are big things. In the meantime, yeah, it happens, doesn't it? You get crushes on people, you get fascinated by people, you get annoyed by this, that, and the other. Just try to avoid following it and just notice what's happening and practice the good that you can do, the restraint that you can do. If you get too bonded to sense, any kind of sense base, then you're laying yourself open to these particular powerful energies, and they're very powerful. These are, the Buddha said, there was another energy like sexual desire. If there was one more like this, you could never get enlightened. It's that powerful. So if you've managed to harness that, you'll do yourself an enormous amount of good. You'll feel very good. You'll have no sense of all the upheavals that sexuality causes, and you'll have definitely made an enormous shift towards liberation. Otherwise, the Buddha wouldn't have been celibate otherwise, for sure. Okay, well, clearly there's all kinds of personal issues one needs to look at in that terms of, with people and partners and so forth. But I can't go any further into that right now. Let's take what I've said, think about it, and hope it's of some use. Because I have to move on a little, and boredom and drowsiness. Boredom leading to drowsiness or total distraction. Well, we do need to keep freshening up. And it's likely this person has been doing, an hour-long sitting, which is commendable. But sitting, the drawback, well, you can get stagnant, sit there. So often walking helps, standing helps, chanting helps a lot. You don't realize what a big feature chanting is in traditional Buddhism, and in generally in Indian, Asian culture. And of course in Christian culture too. And it's not there for decoration. It's the sense that it just lifts, rises everything up. Now, it's great when you do it in a group, of course. What does it do? It's this sense of which certain quality called saddha is aroused, the faith, or there is a possible, there is a beautiful, one rises, and there's a somatic effect to that. You do feel yourself lift with devotion and aspiration. Most spiritual practices have a God in them, So most practices like Jesus or Krishna or Kuan Yin or something. So they generally have something, because that does give you something to sort of, to rise up to. Of course, in straight Theravada, you don't have anything theistic, but you do have Buddha. So you can even, it's kind of seems, when you're coming from the kind of Vipassana tradition, then this is kind of strange, but trying to rise to that which you sense is beautiful and have a shrine or a sense of sacred does help to keep lifting things up. In terms of heart, freshen up. And the other basis is to work on the bodily basis, often with boredom, drowsiness, just your bodily energy is stale. So it's to stand up, do some walking, and why often in retreats I do Qigong sessions with people, just because it's the nature of the body, energies go stale, and then it becomes psychological. What was actually somatic, a lack of refreshment, stagnant state becomes psychologized into, I'm bored, I'm fed up. It means essentially the bright energy is not present. So you need to get it present. Another way, so there's bodily energy, mental energy arises through investigation. So you can bring energy into a practice by investigating. But with boredom, sometimes you're too bored to investigate it. It's not interesting. But you might notice what's happening in your body and then perhaps start to use. Stand. Because sometimes when you're drowsy, you think, we'll get through it. Yeah, I'll be all right. You don't feel like doing very much. And you say, well, you could stand up, couldn't you? I suppose so. Stand up. You could open your eyes, couldn't you? Yeah. You could move your head, couldn't you? Yeah. Take a few breaths. The most important breath is the out breath. Cleaning out. Really long, full out breath. Let the inhalation come. Then you freshen up. Being with friends, Kalyanamitta, also helps to keep your practice alive in terms of investigation and inquiry. Okay, let's have a look. I have a few more here. Questions about the deathless. The mundane to the supramundane. How does one turn towards the deathless? Through the purification of the citta can then one realize the unconditioned through the conditioned nature of citta. This is a phrase that occurs several times in the suttas. It says, one reviews the aggregates thus, as one reviews feeling, form, perception, mental activations, consciousness. One reviews them. This is wearisome, this is a burden, this is a hassle, this is agitation, and so forth. You begin to see something is nipita, means it's disillusioned, disenchanted with more feeling, more form, more mental activity. You just see they just come and go, they don't arrive anywhere. So therefore one is no longer fascinated by it. So the turning is more like a turning of intention. One is no longer looking for, so the citta then turns its intention. Now, see, turning sounds physical, like actually, but I don't think it's a turning. It's adjusts its taste. and it returns to this deathless property. Now, what is that, you might say? And of course, you can create another word, unconditioned nirvana, but what's the experience that we're referring to? Well, indeed. Still, peaceful, absence of content, no stress, restful, intimate, you could say, no time. There's lots of things you can say aren't there. Personal story, personal boundary, future, past, no, not there. And that's properly as accurate. Now, can one realize the unconditioned through the conditioned nature of citta? Yes, to a degree, yes. I mean, what else are you going to go through? You have to work. You've got a conditioned citta, and through its skillful cultivations, it begins to uncondition itself. That is, it begins to drop certain primary conditions, such as owning, such as boundaries, such as having a center, such as having continuity. I will be. What will happen next? I've got to get on to the next thing. If I get this, will I get that? Having been this, what will I be next? This time sense that is to be relinquished. And so in the relinquishment of these conditions and the fostering of the conditioned supports that will make that possible, such as mindfulness, such as energy, such as wisdom, discernment, then it becomes possible to do that. Now the results, one would say, well, yeah, you can experience results in terms of condition. That is the condition of hatred does not arise. The condition of sadness does not arise. The condition of passion does not arise. What doesn't arise? So, defilement does not arise. Projection onto other people, like I want this from her. This thing will make me happy. That doesn't arise. So in those ways, the absence of certain significant conditioning factors is a sign that the citta has dropped. Some of its conditioned or increasing number or increasing amount or increasing degree of its conditioned fetters. So, that's another longish story. The 10 fetters. I won't go into all that right now, but it's to do with, first of all, having said I'm not going to go into it, now I'm going to go into it. the personality with his narratives, and I will be this and I'm like that. What's that all about? It's just an ongoing babble, conversation. Enough of that conversation, finish that conversation, not interested in that conversation anymore. Right, there's a stream enterer. And then no longer, I've talked about the boundary of pleasure and pain, how one wants to get around pleasure and push away pain, that boundary dropping away. So it's to do with hedonic or emotional or restrictions. And then that dropping away to a lesser and greater degree. And then even the sense of being something. The Arahant is not locatable in place, in space, or in time. Okay. Well, these may sound abstract, but until you've experienced them, they are abstract. But those are recognized or reported upon, recognized marks of the traceless, the absence, what's absent. To turn towards that is a constant shifting away from those fetters, away from that fascination, obsession with me, my story, my this, that, and the other. You know, we've either dealt with it or we're no longer interested in it. You know, obsession with getting my space and getting my way and keeping him out of it, this and that out of it. Turning away from those kind of inclinations and the ability to do so. So the more the citta can relinquish those, because they're not actually, they're its own inclinations. It's not like there's a world out there that's designed to annoy me. Possibly it seems like that on a bad day. There's no people out there who've been set up to annoy you. There's just your irritability that needs to be dealt with. It's your own citta's intentions or unconscious reflexes that need to be dismantled. When they're dismantled, there's no world that's going to annoy you or fascinate you. Yeah. So they're turning that way. So essentially the ending of the turmoil and the stress. Another question, I mean, these may be things you'd like to ponder. But someone's asking a question about, sometimes we hear descriptions of phenomena arising out of the deathless and returning into the deathless. This makes Nibbana sound like a ground of being. A ground of being, a person writes that in quote marks as a phrase, ground of being. Are there passages in the canon to support this? Well, you know, you can find all kinds of cryptic, poetic, figurative, imaginative, metaphorical language in the canon, and that you could hang any number of views on. Really, it depends how you use the words and how the Buddha was using the words. So he says, when Nibbana, you call it the island. Oh, it's definitely a place then. An island you cannot go beyond. I call it Nibbana. Oh, there's a particular place I can go to. Well, I think he's just using words to say there's definitely something you can, where you feel safe. Is that a place? The use of language. And phenomena arising out of the deathless and returning to the deathless. I don't see that phrase ever being used in the canon. Because, certainly returning. I mean, what is it that gets the phenomenon to arise in the first place? There must be some kind of propellant, craving or wishing or inclination to get phenomena to well up. And certainly phenomena can be seen as arising and passing, or forming and fading, taking form and breaking up. So this may be just another figurative expression. Phenomena do crystallize. You know, if you, where does the thought come from? It sort of starts to crystallize very quickly, and then it can also evaporate. And there's a certain space one experiences in the evaporation or the waning of a thought or an emotion. Now, whether this is the deathless element or a deathless property or like a glimpse of the deathless, it's not the complete thing, but maybe just a little flash, you get some flash into it, you could follow that up. The Buddha, as long as there are phenomena arising, that's not the deathless. Yes, the deathless phenomena don't arise. So, how did the Buddha, having realized Nibbana, how did he come out of it again? That's a good question, right? If he's in a state where everything's kind of ceased, what gets him out of it? So it seems to be the case that he'd already set up a determination, or there's a pre-existing determination that brings phenomena back. But I don't think this not the arising and passing, it's something much more deliberate and not just stuff happening. It's a definite turning of the citta in some way. So, ground of being, I don't think you can find that phrase or anything that backs that up. In metaphorical terms, you could find it. Things like the island, the safe place, the refuge. These are poetic expressions that give people a feeling of, yes, it's definitely, Nibbana is definitely not an idea. It's definitely an experience that one can dwell in. But I think the nature of the question seems to look for a state of permanent being that is not what the canon is referring to. Okay, so we have a little more time. I mean, these are topics one can interestingly kick around and pick up pieces of this. Somebody said that, and he said that, it says this in the book, and you can go on around it. And there's a certain point in which you think, yeah, well, I think I'll just go back to breathing in and out and trust the process will get me there in its own time, because you can speculate about the inconceivable until the cows come home and you won't be any wiser. So question asks, refers to these phrases internally and externally. Ajata Pahita, Pali words, that are used in a number of situations and often translated as internally, externally, sometimes translated as here and there. They are rather fuzzy terms, just like here and there are rather fuzzy. And so people have tried to make them more definite by saying internally refers to yourself, externally means other people. Doesn't really work. For example, Satipatthana Sutta, one contemplates the breath internally, one contemplates it externally. So it means you watch your own breath and you watch somebody else's breath. I don't think so. I've never noticed anybody contemplating somebody else's breathing. Never. I don't see this as a practice, contemplating other people's breathing. And particularly in this situation where it says, you sit alone at the foot of a tree in a wilderness, there's nobody else to watch. So I don't think this refers to, it says, contemplate the mind internally, externally, which means you read your own mind, then you contemplate somebody else's mind. I don't think so. I mean, can you really be sure? So I don't think this simplistic breakdown as internal, ajata means myself, ahida means somebody else, it doesn't seem to work. So what I've reviewed this, and my hypothesis, I'm not saying this is a final statement, but what I'm working on is internal is much more to do with subjective, externally objective. Now, what I mean by that is I contemplate the breath objectively. I'm breathing in and out. Breath is traveling from my belly up through my nose, my chest. It's as if I am watching it, right? And I'm watching it. and I can define it. So it seems to be external to my position. I am watching it. Internally, breathing is an experience where energy is flushing through me. It seems to be inside me, flushing through me. I contemplate my mind externally. Oh, I'm feeling really angry right now. This is anger. I'm angry because of this and that and the other. Those are external references. Internally, heating, tightening, passion moving through, fluctuations in the citta, subjective experience. So that's what I'm suggesting as a model, and you can. So subjective means you're really in it, and it feels as if it's filling you. Objective, you're witnessing it, watching it, defining it. Now, then the person recites the Buddha's instructions to Bahia, and he says, when Bahia for you in the seen is merely what is seen, there will be neither here nor there nor in between the two. Neither ajata nor bahida. Yeah, because it's the fundamental features of both of these experiences, internal and external, is me. Internal, this is happening through me. I'm filled with this experience, me. I'm overwhelmed with delight or fear. External, this nasty stuff is sweeping over me. This unpleasant sense is happening to me, right? So it's externalized. It's the me sense is the common denominator. Now with that gone, or that location dissolved, then those references and the energies that they represent are diffused. You know, things arise, move within awareness. What is conceived is just the conceived. There's no passion, there's no grabbing it, there's no resisting of it. And both of those are signs. We resist, we try to keep something we fear or dislike or feel overwhelmed, we try to keep it out. That's resistance. Fascination, we try to pull it in. With the ending of resistance and the ending of fascination, there's the ending of the boundary. Therefore, when there's no boundary, there can be no internal and no external. And so this is the end of suffering. So just watch that boundary. And however silly or passionate or convincing the mood is, resisting it, trying one thing, and trying to absorb it, another thing. If you let go of those energies, the boundary dissolves. This is an ending of stress. Ending of sense of self. Okay, I have now completed these series of questions. So somebody has been patiently had their hand up in the room, Igor, and I'd like to see if it's possible to have to respond to you. I wonder if this is possible. Where are you? How to work with tightness in the chest and difficult breathing. Can you hear me okay? How to work with tightness in the chest and difficulty in breathing. Best thing I would suggest is to do some walking. Move around and really letting your body flex and soften. So you should walk as if you're swimming or strolling to really release these posture muscles. So there are certain fundamental signs, such as tightness is generally either to do with either something like a fear or an anxiety, so we restrict, or so it's a quality associated with not wanting to be overwhelmed by the external conditions, so we tighten up. This affects your breathing. Or frustration. I want to move and I can't. So this is more like an anger situation. So it's what's outside us, what's outside our boundaries affecting, and that becomes established. So we need to get a sense of the space around me is very open and warm and friendly. I can move around, and it definitely helps the body to release. I wouldn't, if you're having difficulty breathing, I wouldn't focus on breathing. You need to focus on something you feel comfortable with. If it's just standing or walking, that's adequate. Don't focus on a top, because the focus itself will tend to intensify your difficulty. So I focus on something you feel comfortable with. Let your body relax until by itself you feel breathing. Don't go to the breathing, let the breathing come to you at the appropriate time. Okay, so thank you for your questions. Yeah, it's good to, because it's always good to ask these things. It's helps to keep us investigating what one person's questions are. In some ways, they apply to all of us. We experience the same human predicament. Sometimes they seem very embarrassing and personal, but it's exactly the same for everyone in different situations. And so we always enlighten each other by, presenting our inquiries, our problems, our uncertainties. It's a great blessing, Dhammakatha. Okay.
Dhammakataya sadhu karanda dhammasehi sadhu 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 anumodani.
Okay. So, yeah, we'll just take a couple of moments of pause. This may have stimulated things in yourself. You've got more questions to ask, but I suggest you have to wait for another occasion right now and ask another teacher. And hopefully we can do this again at another time. So just take that respectful moment's pause when you've heard a load of words. 5 of them, 10 of them, a few phrases have been helpful. Remember, this will all be recorded and you can get it back again. Particularly when you've just heard it, notice, did anything light up, shift right now? This is they say if you really listen to a Dhamma talk, the enlightenment factors are present whenever you listen to Dhamma. So did something arise for you?
I'm on it.
My computer seems to have got chatty now. Okay, be quiet. And let's take our time and wish everyone well. And amazing that we can have this occasion of Dhamma still alive in the world. Okay, we'll sign off for today, and if conditions support it, have another session. So far, we're aiming at this time of day. This may have to shift in accordance with what's happening in the monastery and other commitments, but I think we're okay for next week. And if we can live through another week, which is never certain. Take care. Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivadhi Swagato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Okay. Be well, have to leave now. Take care.